Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss how the Eat Out to Help Out scheme could prove nearly as damaging for Sunak as Partygate was for Boris Johnson. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, what's the problem for Rishi Sunak when the COVID inquiry scrutinises the decisions around the use of the Eat Out to Help Out from the summer of 2020? Well, to understand the danger to him, we need to understand two things. First, why Sunak is much more popular with the public than his party are. And second, what really happened when Sunak launched his ill-advised scheme in 2020. So first of all, what is the source of Sunak's relative popularity? It is relative. Well, it's not raw charisma, is it? He comes across very awkwardly during questioning by journalists. His speeches are cringeworthy. His photo opportunities generally turn into absolute disasters. It's not his handling of the economy either. Not only was he the Chancellor who presided over the massive upturn in the cost of living crisis, but he's done none of the things he promised during the leadership contest. He's not controlled inflation. Core inflation is increasing. Food inflation staying stubbornly high. He's not steadied the financial markets. Gilts are close to their Liz Truss premiums. Interest rates still rising. People are continuing to feel worse off, not better. The reason the public gives Sunak more credit than he really warrants is ultimately because of furlough. For those who needed it, the furlough scheme was a lifesaver. Never mind that it was a scheme that was devised before he even became Chancellor, nothing really to do with him other than approving of it, or that he failed millions of self-employed workers who got nothing, as well as failing to provide adequate sick pay, which would have allowed people to isolate when they became COVID positive instead of having to hide the fact because they couldn't afford to live on sick pay. The public don't search out the details, and most of the media was certainly not drawing their attention to it. What made Sunak popular was the furlough scheme. And at the time he was popular. Like at the moment, you wouldn't say he was popular objectively, but just more popular than the rest of his party and his senior colleagues. But at the time, he genuinely was popular. A lot of people appreciated it. It gave the impression he was providing a necessary safety net for people during what will have been, for some, the toughest financial period of their working lives. Just as Johnson lost the public by being exposed as someone who expressed absolutely zero solidarity with those suffering from having no contact with their loved ones, especially dying loved ones, so Sunak could lose the public who still support him if it's discovered that far from protecting people, he was actually screwing them over. The Eat Out to Help Out scheme was presented to the public as a way to kickstart the economy and help out battered hospitality businesses. Only it didn't. Not only did it not really help the economy, it created the conditions for another COVID wave. That certainly damaged the economy. Sunak's Eat Out to Help Out scheme contributed to the deaths of people, as well as the second national lockdown, which followed in its disastrous wake. And as with every other COVID-related policy in 2020, the government insisted that they had followed the science. No one believes that. Frankly, you don't need to be an internationally respected expert to know that no body of scientific expertise would have been comfortable with this scheme. Restaurants were amongst the worst places to encourage people to congregate. Mostly indoors, generally with very little ventilation. You can't wear face masks because that is something of a hindrance when you're trying to eat. Absolutely perfect conditions for generating a new wave of COVID infections. And the absolute killer aspect of the scheme, if you'll pardon the expression, was that you weren't really supposed to take advantage of this offer for takeaways. It was like, no, you just go to a restaurant, you must sit in the restaurant and eat inside. So the government were offering financial inducements, not to boost the hospitality industry, but specifically to get people to congregate indoors without face masks. In a report this weekend, a member of the government's scientific advisory team, SAGE, Professor John Edmonds, said that scientists were never asked to discuss the Eat Out to Help Out scheme by the government. In other words, according to Professor Edmonds, it had not been considered by the government scientists and no scientific advice was taken account of when Sunak implemented the policy. Professor Edmonds said that if they'd been asked about it, he would have described it as a spectacularly stupid idea. So the government would have done better to continue to financially support industries and workers whose businesses were at odds with dealing with the pandemic, until it was actually safe to change our social habits again. You know, Professor Edmonds also said that SAGE, were, not just on this issue, were never asked to discuss any policies. He said that the government sometimes asked the scientists the odd question, but they never asked them, they never sort of said to them, look, we're working on this strategy, what do you think about it? He said the first they ever heard about these policies was the same day the rest of the public found out. Now, this is bound to be explored during the COVID inquiry, after all, as the main focus is on learning lessons for the future as well as holding people accountable for the past. There is no greater lesson to be learned than listen to the experts. Now, it is worth noting some people have reasonable grounds to mistrust Professor Edmonds because he pushed some fairly unscientific sounding positions to the public via the media. Now, I don't know whether he did so because he believed them or because he was towing the government line in order to remain in SAGE. I can't say that. I know a number of SAGE scientists adopted lines that other scientists said, well, that's not right, simply because to keep the government on side. The belief was, if we're not in SAGE, we can't influence government policy at all. By being in SAGE, we can at least alert them to certain things. I don't know. What I do know is that the inquiry will be interviewing numerous experts, including those in SAGE, so the truth will come out. We will not be reliant upon the testimony of one person, although it may take some considerable time because the inquiry is not due to report for a few years. But what is going to emerge this summer, we're not going to have to wait a few years for things to come out. What is going to emerge this summer is a narrative whereby it becomes established that expertise was never part of government planning, because there's public hearings going to be taking place. The best Rishi Sunak can hope for is that the inquiry focuses on the way he objected to some of Johnson's more insane schemes, which he did, and I'm sure that'll come out. But he cannot expect to hide the support he offered for policies which seem to exist simply to pour money into the pockets of business owners, Tory donors mostly, with the public as collateral damage. There is, unsurprisingly, a move to try and discredit the inquiry as somehow going beyond its established terms of reference. But this is a nonsense. If it were going beyond its own terms of reference, then Sunak would easily win his judicial review, won't he? Nobody seriously expects him to, even his own ministerial allies. The strongest support I've heard for this court action against his own inquiry was from a junior minister, a political ally of Sunak's, who basically said, can't remember the exact words, but it was along the lines of, well, you never know, it's worth a shot, isn't it? Because it's not their money they're wasting on this judicial review. You know, there is going to be an almighty battle for the public narrative this summer. Summer is usually known as silly season by MPs because Parliament's in recess for an extended period of time and the government gets to more easily control its output. So the media will, in normal times, because there's a bit of a political vacuum, tend to hype things up a bit in order to generate interest in political news. Hence silly season. Only these days, it's the government who are the progenitors of silly season, not so much the media. Only over the past few years, there hasn't really been the need to hype anything up. Our government jumped into the abyss some years ago. Last summer, we had the chaotic Tory leadership contest where senior Tories all claimed that the Tories had been a disaster in power. Summer before, what did we have? Boris Johnson's vaccine boost in the polls was fading and his policies were coming home to roost. He lost a safe Tory seat in a by-election and Labour began clawing back the Tory lead. By the end of the autumn, Labour had retaken the lead and have not relinquished it since. The year before was the summer of the insane COVID policies, which is now the focus of this inquiry. And the year before that was the meltdown of May's government, which gave birth to the chaotic reign of Boris Johnson. We haven't had a politically normal summer for years, and this summer may actually blow all of them out of the water. We have essentially a three-way battle. We have the public inquiry, which is trying to just do its job and investigate the decision-making which underpinned our pandemic response. We have the uncooperative government who are trying to block their own inquiry from inquiring into anything. And we have Boris Johnson, who now that he sort of realises he's not coming back, is determined to hit the self-destruct button and take the Conservative Party down with him. How can this not be the silliest season of all? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.